Hi, I'm Tyler Fertel here, joined by Brian Sieman, who is the Clippers play-by-play broadcaster. Brian, thank you very, very much for joining me here today.
Well, this is an honor. We're all talking about being able to be a guest on your podcast. And so we're super excited to talk to you and really excited about your future for sure.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate that. And to start off the podcast, I just really want to talk about kind of how you decided that you wanted to go into play-by-play. And did you know that always in high school and college that it was something you were looking to go into, or did it kind of just happen?
It's a good question. For some people, they stumble in on it. And for others like myself, I was in second grade and one of our teachers was good friends with the local sports anchor. So I grew up in West Des Moines, Iowa, and he came in one day and he kind of went through his day. So this was back in the 80s. College basketball is just as big, if not bigger at the time than the NBA. And he would cover the University of Iowa, which was a massive program back in those days. And he said, I get up at around 11. I drive to Iowa City. I interview players. I stay for the game. And then I go on television after the game and I tell you how the team did. And everything about that sounded awesome, from sleeping in to watching a basketball game and staying up late. And I had it in the back of my mind, like, I'm interested. And ultimately what happened was I started watching NBA basketball games. And again, this is Des Moines, Iowa, middle of the 80s. So it doesn't sound as big of a deal as it would today, but I saw for the first time ever Magic Johnson play, and it changed my whole outlook of what I wanted to do. I wanted to not only just play basketball at a high level, which I never did, but I wanted to cover the NBA. I wanted to be a part of the NBA. I could not get enough of watching him play. And ever since then, I wanted to be a play-by-play announcer in the NBA. It didn't matter where. I just wanted to be in the NBA because I loved the drama. I loved the history. I loved the players. And so I've always had that in my mind. I did play basketball up into my junior year. I realized I wasn't going to be a guy that was in the rotation. And I was fortunate enough to go to a school that had a high school radio station. And I became the sports director, and I did play-by-play for football and basketball. And that's really how everything took off from there. My sole purpose was to do what I'm doing now. And I found out a journalism program at the University of Kansas was very good. And so, and the rest, as they say. So it started at a young age, but a lot of decisions that I made, even before I had my driver's license, came into play for this exact moment. So I was lucky. I think it's a real blessing to know what you want to do at a very early age.
Mm-hmm. And you talked about how you went to the University of Kansas, which is almost, if you're thinking about college basketball programs, it's almost like a professional program. It's covered like a professional program. It's spotlighted like a professional program. And so when you were studying journalism at Kansas, was it almost like you're getting a sneak peek into what professional broadcasting was like, or what professional journalism was like?
On so many different levels. We had a great group of guys that were all super talented and have been scattered across our country doing big stuff at Division I levels, at NBA levels, at the NFL. It was a really good mixture of people, and it would give you some discomfort to be like, man, I'm not there yet. I'm not where so-and-so is at. I need to get better. I need to start doing more. Then you see how professionals cover the team. You see actual pros, as you put it. You had ESPN reporters coming in, and you'd see how they run in a scrum, and that's what's called when you're dealing with a coach or a player, and there's several different microphones around. We call that a scrum, and how they would be able to get their question in there, what they would do. Would they talk to the coach on the side, the sports information director? They would make sure that, hey, I need 2 questions. Can I get these in? And you really did learn. And then on top of that, we had just a phenomenal professor. His name is Tom Hedrick. He is since retired. Tom was the voice of so many things. The Cincinnati Reds. He was the voice of the Cotton Bowl for 10 years. He was the voice of NBC baseball on radio for over a decade. He had the resume that we all wanted. And he was kind of the first truth teller that I came across in something where I wanted to get better in. And if you haven't had a truth teller, they will give you like really rough information, and they're not looking for bedside manner. They're telling you you're not good enough to be hired here. If you sent this tape in, I wouldn't even listen past 30 seconds, and you need to be better. And then he'd slide the tape across the table, and you'd feel 2 feet tall, but it would just, if this was something you wanted to do, you accepted the criticism and you went back to work, and you would try to fix the things that he was talking about. And nothing is ever a quick fix in that age, in that era, when you're still trying to develop your personality, your style. But it just gave you the blueprint, and he just kind of shined a light on how hard you have to work in order to be able to find success. So I definitely would be living under a bridge if it wasn't for Tom Hedrick and the University of Kansas.
Mm-hmm. And after all those experiences, you got the University of Kansas, really being exposed to what sports journalism, sportscasting overall is. How did you work to get your foot in the door professionally? I mean, after you went to Kansas, I mean, I'm guessing you didn't go straight to commenting in the NBA. I mean, it's a process for sure.
No, those stories happen. They're very, very rare. So I'm going to date myself, and I think our profession has a cycle, and I think it's actually sped up now. But I used to think every 10, 15 years that the way you climb the ladder changes. I was on the tail end of the kind of the belief where you start in a small town and you work your way up into a bigger market. I would not give that advice today. I really wouldn't. So I started out in a town called Jefferson, Iowa. I was there for 3 months. I'm a big city guy in terms of where my heart has always been. Even though I grew up in West Des Moines, Iowa, I always wanted to be in a New York or in a Los Angeles or just a major market where it's just, you never know what could happen. So starting in a small town of 3,000 people total, it was a bit of a culture shock, but I wasn't there very long. A minor league job had opened up in Des Moines for basketball in a new league, and I sent in my tape. I knew some people that were working there, and again, networking is a big thing in our industry, as you and I were talking off the air, and that's where really it all began. I was with a team called the Des Moines Dragons in the International Basketball Association. This was 1998 through 2000. So I give you those dates because it's modern day in the sense. So when I give you the salary that I made, I don't want you to think that this was 1934 and I was like the Rockefellers. I made $5,000 a year and lived in my parents' basement. I worked full time. I was there in the offices on non-game days. I was there all summer long, but it really helped me cut my teeth in the minor leagues. And I was able to kind of have a skill set that went beyond play-by-play, because in the minor leagues, and oftentimes, certainly in the NBA, it still happens, you need to be able to do something else, like doing something other than play-by-play to help market yourself. You can speak in front of the sponsors. You can go on, sales calls, all those things. And that job certainly helped me do that. I got to the CBA, went to Drake University, and then the CBA and the WNBA were my two biggest breaks. And those are the ones that were able to put me in where I'm at now. But it's a process. For me, it was, I graduated in 1998. I called my first NBA game in 2003, got my first full-time job in 2006. So it's a process. And you have to be ready when your number is called. So you got to do a lot of work when the sun is not shining and no one is paying attention, listening to your reel, listening to your tape, listening to others, have others listen to it. There's a big thing that goes on in my mind if you want to climb the ladder. And I was fortunate to have people in my corner, supportive, that had, constructive criticism to allow me to kind of grow. And that's kind of how it all started.
Mm-hmm. And you talked about how every 10 or 15 years, you see this kind of shift in terms of how you create those connections and how you really make your way up. And for you, you said it was starting at this small city in Iowa or somewhere else like that, and then literally getting to bigger and bigger cities. And obviously you went to Minnesota and then you came out to Los Angeles, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I just I'm wondering, like, what was the shift after you and into more my era?
It's a great question. When I was my last year in college, one of our professors said, so this was 1998, he said, in 10 years, you'll be doing a job that is not yet invented, which was crazy to hear, right? And I like to think I'm a forward thinker, but the reality of it is I have no idea how things are going to shift. And 10 years later, I was calling games for the internet on a streaming platform, and that was it. And it was a fun environment. It was for high school football out here in Los Angeles, Prep Zone, and it was basically run and produced through Fox Sports, now known as Bally's. So the shift that has happened is that there are a lot of opportunities out there through streaming, and there are so many leagues that want attention, meaning there's so many more opportunities. You don't have to go to a Jefferson, Iowa. You can be, and you're lucky to be in a great market. You're going to find something. You can find something if you have the ability to do it. You'll find somewhere to be able to call a game, polish up your craft, and instead of moving up markets, you're going to move up leagues. You're going to move up opportunities. And it's a good thing. I mean, it gives you, I'm a believer that if you have the talent, you want all the reps you can get, even if that means 24 other people are going to have the same reps and opportunities. If you believe in your talent and you do the right things, the reps will give you polish. It will help you stand out. So I think that, your generation will have opportunities to call a lot of games and to get better way faster than people in my era, and creates competition. But I think you're going to be ready for it if you have the chops to do it.
Mm-hmm. And then you were talking about how after making your way up from smaller cities to bigger cities and then doing the WNBA and CBA, you got the opportunity with the Minnesota Timberwolves. And I'm just wondering, I mean, when at that first game in the major league arena, what were you thinking in your mind? Are you like, I made it, I'm here, now it's time to shine? Or what was going through your head?
It's another awesome question. I always envisioned what it would be like to have a contract offer from a major league team. And but before I got there, I got a call. I was doing WNBA in 2002 and I just loved it. I loved the players, and the coaches were just so fun to be a part of. And when the season ended, I was heartbroken. I was like, man, I'm going back to Denver where I don't have a radio job, but they were saying, come back next year. We'd love to have you. So I kept in touch with them. They gave me a couple of opportunities to do television sidelines, which I loved doing. And it's a great skill set in and of its own, but it wasn't my passion. And in March of 2003, on a Tuesday morning, my boss from the Lynx called me and he says, Brian, you just got called up to the big leagues. We need you of all places, we need you in Los Angeles to call the Lakers Timberwolves game Friday night. Can you be there? And I'll tell you this, I could have been getting married. I was going to be there. And I thought I had won the lottery. I called my girlfriend, who's now my wife. She was driving into work. You could not understand a word I was saying. I was so fired up. And I just could not believe that I was going to be able to call an NBA game. And I kept thinking, no matter what happens, they'll never take this away from you. You always said your goal was to call an NBA game. Well, here it is. And as we got towards the game, I flew in on a Thursday, and it's Kobe, it's Shaq, and I think they combined for 70 points in on a game in, I think, March 7th, 2003. And I remember as the game went on, I'm like, this is it. Like, as I was approaching tip-off, I'm like, this is your one shot. Don't blow it. Now, that's the worst, by the way. That's the worst advice you could ever give anybody, is to not blow it. But I was so eerily calm, and I just knew that I belonged. I knew that I was going to have a good game. And up to that point, I felt it was the best game that I'd ever done. I was so proud and excited and over the moon. They called me back later that year to do a handful of games after another announcer had to leave. And that kind of got it all going. And I'll never forget, the 2003 is one of my favorite years. That just stretch right there towards the end of the regular season was unbelievable. So I kind of went around the block to go next door, but it's one of my favorite all-time core memories of this profession. And I just felt like, if you said, Brian, you could have $1 million in cash, or you could have that moment, I would take that moment every single time.
And after really getting started, I mean, you did your time to get up to the NBA. I mean, you went through the steps, and it's something you're probably very proud of, that you really earned your spot as an NBA broadcaster. But even when you're in the NBA, in years into your job in the NBA, does there come a point where you feel comfortable on air, or you always kind of like, I mean, play-by-play is something that happens very quickly. I mean, you're talking about passes and shots and out of bounds and fouls and everything. I mean, it happens very quickly. So how is there a point where you're like calmed down, or are you kind of on the edge of your seat the whole time?
So it's kind of there's two parts to our job. I am always in awe. I am always in disbelief that I am doing an NBA game and that I'm going to an NBA arena. And I 5 years ago, I switched over from radio to television, and I work with people that I grew up watching on television, whether they were players, coaches, or broadcasters. So like the guys that I work with regularly now are Jim Jackson, who played at Ohio State when I was in high school. I told you I grew up in West Des Moines, Iowa. That's Big Ten country. So I knew who Jim Jackson was 30 plus years ago. Mike Fratello was doing NBA on NBC in 1990 when I was at peak fandom and just so desperate for NBA information because there was no internet. I didn't have any access to it in Iowa. So whenever NBA came on NBC on the weekends, I mean, it was appointment television. I recorded every game. So I'm getting to the point that when I leave my house and I go to those games, I always tell my wife, I'm like, by the way, I'm only working with Mike Fratello. Just going to go hang out with Jim Jackson tonight. Not a big deal. As far as how you feel on the air, the answer is yes, you will feel comfortable, and it comes sooner than you think. And I think for me, personality is like our fingerprint, so to speak. Once you find your personality on the air, it will separate you from everybody else. So you will feel comfortable. You'll feel like what you want to talk about. What is it that you value? So for me, I want people to know why this player making this shot or not making this shot is or isn't a big deal. Why is this win a big deal or not a big deal? I want you to be informed. I want you to have a good time. And I want you to feel that, if you're the other team and you have to watch our show, that we gave your team a fair shake. That's kind of just my personality. And once you discover that and you bring that to the air, the comfort level will be there. But I'm always anxious for the games, not nervous like, oh my God, how am I going to handle this? But anxious like, let's go. I'm ready to go. I have got all the info. I can't wait for the game to start. And oddly enough, and this sounds weird, I can't wait for the game to end. Not because I'm not in heaven doing these games. I can't wait to go home and listen to it and say, did I get better today? And I listen to every game I've ever done. I've been blessed to do over maybe 1,500 NBA games. Wow. I've listened to all of them at least once or twice, probably more like 3 or 4 times. And I just get so excited to say, hey, that was way better today. Or I in a weird way, I'm excited to find out, hey, you need to be better there. That's going to come up every game. You need to be ready. And you weren't ready today. I am excited when the game begins. I'm excited when the game ends for that reason. And I am always in constant awe that I get to do this. As a kid that dreamt about doing this at 8 years old, to be actually doing it, I just tell you, man, I've won the lottery in so many ways.
Mm-hmm. And is that kind of, is replaying the games after and really kind of treasuring the moments, is that a form of like preparation for you for the next game? Or is it kind of just like you said, being in awe of the stage that you're on?
100% preparation. I'm never in awe of, oh man, you are so great. I'm not like, I often don't look forward to it in this after a minute. I'm like, oh my God, who are you fooling to keep your job? The excitement level isn't to hear, man, I'm so good. The excitement level is, did you do a professional job? It's, did you get better today? And I'm always thinking you can get better. So I listen to a game right after I've done it. Like, when we are on the road, we get on the plane. Beautiful thing about technology, that game is available. You can watch it right then and there. And so I listen to that game or watch it as I'm flying to the next city. And then when the summertime hits, and I did this back in, what is this month? Now we're in August. So back in May and June, I went back and I randomly watched all of our games out of order intentionally. I didn't want to know the storylines. I had forgotten everything. So like on, June 1st, I pull up a game from November 29th and I'm like, I have no idea what our record was. Do I tell you what the record is? Do you feel you have a good idea of what's going on with this team? Because while you will have your diehards that hang on every second of a game, because they love the team, you'll also have those people coming in and out of the season and not necessarily knowing, how well have we been playing? And when was the last time we beat this team? I want to give you all that information. So it's it serves so many different purposes for me to watch these games. Preparation for the actual game, preparation aid in that, hey, you're not telling me everything I need to know. I was pretty confused. I didn't know if that guy was playing well or not. You didn't really elaborate on that. So I think it's a huge, huge thing for young, aspiring broadcasters. Even if you're a talk show host, even if you're a host on a television program, watch yourself and listen to yourself. Watch others that you emulate or you really respect, and you will learn. I think it helps the growth process. It just speeds it up so much faster.
Mm-hmm. And kind of going through, you talked about that transition that you made from radio to TV, and you talked about your methods of at least preparation on TV, because you can watch the game and hear how you're talking about it. But the difference between radio and TV is when you're commentating on TV, your listeners or your watchers are seeing what's on the screen. They can see the game. The difference is on radio, they can't. So you're kind of telling them everything that is going on either on the court, in the arena. And so I'm just wondering how different is the preparation for radio, and how much is it harder to do radio broadcasting than it is TV, or is it just different?
It's just different. From a mental fatigue standpoint, I am bushed after a radio call. I was solo for, I don't remember how many years I did. I was lucky to do radio, maybe 12 or 13 years I did radio solo. And I embraced that. That was really, I loved being solo, not from an ego standpoint, but from a ability to paint the entire picture the way that I want it to be done. Preparation is somewhat similar, but you probably use a lot less, because once that ball is in motion, I'm telling you where that ball is at, how high it's being bounced, where the other players are doing, what the guy with the ball is trying, or gal trying to do with the ball. When I would listen to radio, like when I critique a television show, I can have it on in the background and just kind of keep an eye out over there. But when I would do radio, I used to have a piece of cardboard, like from a box, and it had a basketball court, kind of like the dimensions of it, had a bench and had crowd. And I would sit there and I would just put my pencil on the board or on the cardboard, and I would move it around to where I was saying the ball was. Left-handed dribble on the right wing in front of a seated Tyronn Lue as he drifts down to the baseline, and I would just drag my finger to make sure that I wasn't doing like all these kind of jump cuts. Here's Kawhi Leonard with the basketball. Oh, and a layup by LeBron James. Like, well, what just happened there? Like, how did LeBron get the ball? Where was Kawhi Leonard? I want to know everything from a description standpoint. So when I would prep for a basketball game on radio, I would make sure that I was giving you all. It's just like real estate in Los Angeles. It's location, location, location. That's how radio works. But stat wise, it's the same. I write a little bit more for television with intros and teases, and working with an analyst, I will always have a subset of questions for them for that environment that we are in, whether it was they used to play for this team, used to play for that coach, used to coach this player, so on and so forth. There's a little bit of extra work, but it's fun to do. I enjoy doing it, but it's not really all that different to me anyway.
Mm-hmm. And when you made that transition from radio to TV, you were the successor for a legendary Clippers broadcaster and Ralph Lawler. And I was just wondering, really, what was it like kind of filling in for someone like that and really having him as your mentor?
Oh, it was awesome. I interviewed for the job many, many years ago, and they asked me, why do I want to be a Clipper? And I was not in the NBA at the time. And I had said, well, I just want to be in the NBA. That's my first and foremost thing. So if this was in Timbuktu, I would be eager. But I said the gem of this job is to work with Ralph and to just get a lay of the land of broadcasting, the NBA, and how to survive in a big market. And Ralph broke all of the rules. And I was aware of this when I started. I mentioned my professor, Tom Hedrick. He would always tell us the most popular announcer is the one who has the best team. And I think we know the history of the Clippers back in the 80s and for much of the 90s. It wasn't very good. They were a bad basketball team, poorly run. But Ralph was so popular with the fans, and he opened up his personality. He's a funny guy. He's a very smart human being. He's very witty. He is all those things you see on the air. He is that guy off the air too. And fans just loved it, and they appreciated his honesty, his ability to be kind of the joker, his ability to be the straight guy when he worked with Bill Walton. And you see all these different hats that you have to wear to be a team announcer. It's a different world when you're a network announcer. No one is really tuning in to hear you. Like, they want to see the game. And I think the announcers certainly add to it. And like, for me, guys like Mike Breen, Ian Eagle, Kevin Harlan, the best of the best. I mean, those guys are great. But when you're a local announcer and you've got fans tuning in and the game gets sideways, you want to keep them engaged. And sometimes you have to pull back layers on your personality to let them know, hey, we're going to have a little bit of fun here in this fourth quarter. They're going to get to know you. And that's what Ralph did better than literally anyone ever. And it will never be topped because no one will ever have to go through the futility that he did. But he was able to do it all so well. And I got to watch that up close and personal. You can't emulate it. You can't even replicate it. You just have to know that it's something you have a responsibility to do and do it at the best of your level, making those bad games sound great, revealing yourself as a human being on the air, and becoming connected with that fan base. That's what I learned from Ralph. And he was just the best at it. And he was awesome. He was just great to work with.
Mm-hmm. And after really taking over for him on television, I mean, you really got into you really employ some creative phrases. Like, I've seen that, I saw a clip where Nick Batum hit I think a go ahead 3-pointer late in the game. And you use some French words to engage your audience and kind of make it fun. And not only, I mean, it's a stressful moment in the game, but obviously for the Clippers, it was a big moment and you wanted to make that clear and you made that fun through those kind of words and phrases. And so I'm just wondering, how do you come up with these kind of signature phrases and catchphrases? Do they really just come to you directly in the moment, or do you kind of have them planned in the back of your head in case someone hits a big three, or how does that work?
You know, you said stressful moment. It's probably super stressful for fans and coaches and front office execs, maybe for the players. But for broadcasters, I think I speak for all of us, those are the moments we live for. Like, it's not stressful. You feel alive in those moments, and it's so fun to be there in the front row and call those games. You know, I appreciate you mentioning that. I don't. I never go into a game saying, well, I'm going to say these tonight. That's happening. And I would say that a play-by-play announcer, and I think, again, I speak for all of us, we have like a mental Rolodex that when something happens, we can flip through it pretty quickly. All of us, I think, have this gear. It isn't, just myself. And you can be, what would be a good thing to say in that moment? It's almost like time freezes for just a picosecond, and you can kind of go through your Rolodex of, being creative. And a lot of, if I ever have a phrase, sometimes I've seen a play happen, and I go, what would be good to say next time? And you just kind of file it away. You know what I mean? Like, it isn't like on the spot, you're going to just create something crazy in the moment. Sometimes that does happen. But a lot of times I'm like, somebody will have a dunk and I'm like, you know what? He slams it through and Clippers are up by 10. What would be funny if I said next time I would say this, or it would be cool to say this. Sometimes they work. Sometimes they do not. But I think that's probably where a lot of them come from for all of us, for sure.
And I mean, before this kind of little group of Clippers with Kawhi and Paul George and now Russell Westbrook and everyone, I mean, we had the high flying era with Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan. I mean, that was a beyond exciting time for Clippers fans. And so were there any times where your excitement kind of got all jumbled up within you, and you kind of like, when the DeAndre Jordan, for example, that DeAndre Jordan dunk on Brandon Knight? I mean, I don't know if you were commentating during that, but like, when that happens, I mean, what do you do?
First of all, I want to say I heard you use the word "we" when you were referencing the Clippers, even though you had told me before this podcast began that you were a Laker fan. So I can see that you've got some interest. We've got room over here. We've got room over here. But anyway,
I'm fine. I'm fine saying at crypto.com arena, but
it is funny. And when I listen to a game and I critique it, it's, did you get too crazy? Because I have energy. I have always had energy. I've always had excitement. It's 100% natural. It's my actual emotion in the moment. And early on in games, I don't want to peak too high. So sometimes there have been plays that we had a block a few years ago that was it was like the first play of the game, and a player came back for the other team and cocked it back. And I mean, it was just a total poster moment. And I think DeAndre Jordan came out of nowhere and blocks it. They meet at the summit. The ball stops. They cut. It was one of the greatest blocks I'd seen. It was the first play of the game, and I went wild. And I said, I'm sorry, it's the first play of the game, but that was nuts. The funny thing is that the dunk you mentioned with Brandon Knight, I want to say it was in 2013. I saw the play developing, and I remember seeing the pass in mid-flight. And when you do enough games, you can adjust. If you're in the middle of a train of thought, you can adjust. When you've done enough games, it becomes kind of old hand to do. And I saw the pass, and I thought to myself, well, this isn't going to be caught. That's way off. There's no way he catches this pass, all in a picosecond. So I'm saying, Clippers lead by 7, and I see the pass go up, and I'm like, okay, this is going to be a brick off the iron, or he's just not going to catch it. And he did what he did. And my call was the opposite of excitement. I said, this is oh my goodness, I don't believe what I just saw. And then meanwhile, Ralph he's lost his mind on television in a great way. Like, it was a great highlight for him. It was hilarious. And I was so subdued. I could not believe what I had just seen. And Blake and DeAndre made my job, I think, the most fun in the league. Obviously, the Clippers didn't get to where they wanted to go, but Blake was a highlight machine every night. Those Mozgov dunks that he did, DeAndre Jordan throwing down, and DeAndre Jordan, one of my favorite people to talk to as well, was just great to me all the time. So I had a blast. I mean, I really did believe I had the best job, especially on radio, where it's just you painting a picture all by yourself, and it was awesome. Like, I look back at those days as just true highlights of life for me. It was so much fun.
Mm-hmm. And you talked about kind of creating somewhat of a relationship with some of the players. I mean, you talked about DeAndre Jordan, very nice guy to talk to. Did that happen when you were traveling with the team on the road, or was it just after games, before games, really wherever?
So it's another great question, by the way. So for me, I'm a shoot-around attendee. I go to shoot-arounds. I go there for a lot of reasons. Number one, I want to see what they're doing. I like to kind of take the pulse. Number two, this is where you can talk to players. Especially on the road, where they're just getting their sneakers on before the walkthrough. You can just go over there, hey, can I grab you for 2 questions real quick? And I don't use a microphone. I just go over there and kind of chop it up with them a little bit. And 3, I go there to be seen by the players. I don't have a player's phone number in my phone. I don't care to. I don't care if they follow me on Twitter or vice versa. But I do want them to know that I'm a team guy and I got their back. And I think you can build trust from being there every day and asking appropriate questions when you do. Good example is Pat Beverly, who was one of if he's not my favorite all-time Clipper, he's top 3. I loved watching him play. I loved what he did for our team, but he could be grouchy to media members at times. And I remember it was late in the season, his second year, and I'd approached him only in group settings and only when I knew that he had to talk, like he was forced by the team to sit down on a podium and chat. But we were in Minnesota one time, and I was going over to ask him. I said, hey, Pat, can I borrow you for a couple of questions? And I'll clean it up. Yeah, man, you're here all the time. I got all the time for you. You're always here, man. What do you need? What can I help you with? And that just kind of confirmed that, like, hey, shoot-arounds, you might not always get a ton of info, but the players are paying attention, and they will give you info when they know that you're around, and they know that you're going to be, in probably a weird way, accountable. Like, if you were to say something they didn't like, they can find you. But I'm never going to do that. I just have so much respect for those players. So that's how you start to get relationships with players, is to be seen and to have appropriate questions. Blake Griffin, we'll use DeAndre. DeAndre struggled with free throws. And every time, that's what people would talk about. That'd be their first question. And so I would say, I would come out, I don't remember how, I would come out at a different angle. I would say, I know that the free throws are always asked about. Let me ask you something. Like, when you are fouled, deliberately, what is going through your mind, and how are you calming yourself down? He's like, oh, well, I've been working with this assistant coach on this. This is my thought process, is that I'm, X, Y, or Z. And when you go beyond the traditional black and white question of, oh, you're missing free throws, and you go to another level, I think they appreciate that. And that kind of helped, I don't want to say created a bond where we were hanging out and calling each other, but whenever I asked DeAndre Jordan a question, he was always great about it. And I think he knew that I came from a good place.
Mm-hmm. And does it matter to you what the standing of the team is? I mean, whether they're in the Western Conference Finals or struggling in the regular season, I mean, on the borderline top 10 pick range, I mean, does it matter to you and how you treat the players and the questions you ask and how you even react on air? Or is it you kind of always have that same mentality?
Oh, always the same mentality. You're trying to tell the story. You're trying to tell the story of a basketball team. And sometimes the ending is in the future. And sometimes the story ends that season. You know what I mean? Like right now, the story for the Clippers will end this year, like it did last year. In 2018 and 19, the Clippers were in rebuild mode, and the story was yet to be told. We didn't know who the characters were going to be. So it's a rebuild process. So you're highlighting the young players that you have. You're highlighting that this has become a destination for players opposed to being a place of destitution that it was back in the 80s. You're highlighting all these things. And now that the Clippers are in the mix, the story is June. That's where you're trying to get to. And you're building and you're crescendoing to that moment versus the rebuilding teams, which are fun to be a part of. I think optimism, I think having hope is always the best emotion in sports, because when you are in it and you're in the mix, you're nervous. Who's going to get hurt? Who's going to get traded? What if this player doesn't jive with this player? You're nervous that something could go wrong. When you're rebuilding and you are in top 10 lottery pick situation, you're going to win 30 games. You're looking at the optimism. And with the Clippers, with the ownership that they have and the leadership in the front office, and again, being in Los Angeles, any time at the bottom is going to be short-lived, because you have a market that is sellable. You have an owner that's willing to do what it takes, and you've got a very savvy front office. So it's very easy for me to say, it's not a big deal if you need to rebuild, but I treat it the same all the time. And I just embrace whatever kind of stage the team is in.
Mm-hmm. And I pride myself as a Lakers fan, but I'm very curious. You have a very unique perspective on the situation that the Clippers are in. And I'm just wondering, I mean, this year is a big year for the Clippers. I think it's their last year before they move into their new stadium in Inglewood. So it's their last chance to really cement themselves along. I mean, I don't know if they'll ever get to the situation with the Lakers, because the Lakers have been here kind of longer, but at the same time, it's their last season in downtown LA to really create their fan base there. And it's almost like a do or die situation for the team in terms of contracts and in terms of players. What are your expectations for the Clippers this year?
To win it all. Those are my expectations, the same as they were the last 3 years. Injuries have just been so cruel. The basketball gods have not been friendly to the Clippers as far as health is concerned. And I think that they have as good a chance as anybody. I really do. As the roster is currently constructed, I know that there are trade rumors about players like James Harden. I don't know if that happens. I don't know if I need it to happen. Long term, I've just been so happy with how this organization goes about winning and things behind the scenes, the way they take care of their players and the travel party. I was here when it was different leadership, and I'm using that term very loosely, where it was embarrassing. It was embarrassing. And I'll tell you a true story. It was embarrassing really only when we played the Lakers, because I still loved my job, and the people that I worked with on a daily basis are people that I'm still friends with, even 16 years later, even though they're not in with the Clippers anymore. But it was embarrassing when we played the Lakers, and more like just envious, because I'm like, we're never going to be there. We're never going to be in the mix. We're never going to have a player that is, commanding commanding the floor like a Kobe, like a Shaq. And those times have changed. We have that player. We have that ownership. We have that vision. We don't have the titles yet. It's coming. When? I don't know, but I know that it will. They're doing all the things that are right. So It's just been a great place to be, and Intuit Dome is going to be awesome. It would be even more awesome if they're bringing over a championship banner for opening night. There's some work that needs to be done, but I like where they're headed. So my expectations are to win it all, and I know that is going to be the expectation for the organization eternally, certainly as long as Steve Ballmer is the owner.
Mm-hmm. And you kind of talked about it a little bit, and you talked about those games with the Lakers being brutal for you during the Kobe era, but at least during the LeBron era, when Kawhi's been here, when PG's been here, I mean, you guys have had our number, which has been a little bit frustrating. But like you were saying, I mean, there hasn't been as much as a shift in the fans, which is why I think that the move to Intuit Dome is going to be very, very interesting in terms of the fan base and in terms of, like you said, I mean, the championship ring potentially coming sometime soon. I'm hoping, I mean, this might be just like the Clippers. I mean, it's crunch time for the Lakers too, so we'll see about that. But I want to go a little to kind of go into the concluding stages of the podcast. I want to talk a little bit more about the leadership, and like you were talking about before, Steve Ballmer was quote unquote leadership in a way, but Steve Ballmer, he's been very impressive with what he's done with the Clippers, and I'm kind of wondering, like you're in the stadium every day, like you see Clippers games every single day, and he's there every single day too on the sideline. And I'm just wondering, I mean, what is your view on the trajectory of the Clippers under Steve Ballmer? Is it only going to get better? Is he doing a great job? Do you think, I mean, yeah.
I mean, the trajectory here was in 2014. This is where it was. It was kind of, I felt with ownership that was there, that once the talent cycle of Chris, DeAndre, and Blake went out, they were just going to have to kind of win the lottery, get lucky again, because there just wasn't enough support in the front office. The people that they had working there in the front office were talented executives. They're still all in the NBA. Some of them still work for the Clippers. There just wasn't enough of them. There was only like 3 people in the front office. I mean, there are people now that have analytics departments that are bigger than that. So when Steve Ballmer took over, it went from here, like, I mean, straight up, like literally straight up. He wasn't quite owner yet. It was June of 2014, and it was called a prospective buyers meeting. We were allowed to meet him. He came down for a meet and greet. And I remember I was sitting by Ralph Lawler, who had seen it all under the Sterling era. And Steve Ballmer gets up and addresses the room, and he says, I'm going to tell you what this team is going to be about. We're going to be world class. We are going to be heavily involved in the communities, and we're going to win championships. That's what we're coming here to do. And while they haven't done the third part, which is clearly the hardest, I can tell you right now, talking with people around the league in my position and in others, the things that we do on the travel party are second to none. We're just treated like royalty. I get to ride the coattail of giants. I just happen to be there, but those players, their families, so taken care of. And the part that is really special is the way he takes care of the community. So about 3 or 4 years ago, I think the city of Los Angeles came to all the sports teams, and they said, hey, would you be willing to donate and help refurbish some of the courts around the city that are kind of tattered, and we want to really have a nice place for people that, can go to after school. And Steve said, well, how much is it going to cost just for me to do them all? I'll just do all of them. Every one of all of the school districts, I will take care of it. So that's how Junior Clippers became a thing. When they got into Intuit Dome, he's going to put in $80 to $100 million of his own money into the community, affordable housing, all the jobs, everything. This is a world-class human being. And I'll tell you this, I interviewed for the TV job with Steve. That's who I interviewed with. It was Steve and I in a room. And we chatted, and I got to know him a little bit. I don't want to pretend like I could write his biography, but I remember leaving and calling my wife, and I'll say, you know what? If I don't get this job and he doesn't give it to me, I'll tell you, I'll still think he's an awesome guy. So he has done so many things for this organization. I just am so proud to be a part of it and be a part of his vision. Like I said, I just kind of ride the coattails of giants, but I get to represent the Clippers, and it's so easy to do when you have a guy like Steve Ballmer who has all that money. And yes, he spends it on the players. He's going to pay the luxury tax whenever he can, but he donates to great causes that help our country, help our situation, that go beyond basketball. And it's such a prideful feeling to work for the Clippers. It really is.
Mm-hmm. And when you came over to the Clippers out to big, bright Los Angeles from Minnesota. Was this the vision you kind of had in mind playing for this organization? Obviously, it was a very different type of organization even 15, 20 years ago. But what was this what you had envisioned when you were coming out to an organization like this?
Well, it's impossible to envision where we're at today. It really is, especially knowing that Donald Sterling, who owned the team from I think 1984 to 2014, was never going to sell, was going to keep it in the family, and you just knew that you were always going to be kind of a team that wasn't going to be a legitimate contender. But I'm still calling NBA games. I'm living in a city that's 72 degrees and sunny pretty much every day, and I had my summers off for a young family, and I was like, I mean, to me, that's all it was about. I didn't really at that point care about anything else. Now I care about, I want the fans to have a great night. I want them to have a team to be proud of. I want them to be able to celebrate a championship many, many times. It's impossible to envision where we are because it was just not a possibility. It was just impossible. So I go back to what we started earlier. Like, I am in awe every day to get to go to work and do what I do. I never take a day for granted. I've never taken a day off. I've never been like, I'm tired. This is our third game in 4 nights. I'm just going to show up. I just know how blessed I am to be able to do this. And I just never run out of energy, and I never run out of just excitement that I'm here.
Brian, thank you very, very much for coming on the podcast today. I mean, you are what makes people so excited about the sports industry, so excited about the NBA, so excited about watching these games. And I just appreciate you coming on, and it's been an honor to talk to you.
Well, I look forward to a year from now, 5 years from now, and 10 years from now, when you are at the peak of everything, that you would let a lowly regional announcer come on your podcast and chop it up and talk about this day and how great you were today. I mean, as a senior in high school, you're doing all the right things. Keep doing it, and don't lose my information. By all means, let's stay in touch, and I can give you one man's view of what I would do, but first and foremost, really enjoy your senior year of high school. It is a lot of fun. It is the best time. And then you're going to have even better times in college. But to this point, this is what it's all about. Enjoy it. But you are doing all the right things. I'm super happy for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And we'll stay in touch, no doubt about it. So thank you.
Be good, Tyler. Great to talk to you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Tyler's Takes from start to finish. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to my podcast on YouTube or whatever platform you are on right now, and share it with your friends. I would love to hear from you, so please feel free to leave a review, give me feedback in the comment section, or send me a message on social media. If you'd like to hear more about my podcast or me, you can follow me on Instagram or TikTok as well. See you next time.